Hope y'all got good coffee this afternoon, yeah? There's some nice Vietnamese coffee on the street if you haven't gotten any. Welcome. We've got a lot packed in this session today. I'm going to kick things off before we jump into a panel about VR app engagement and retention and why you should care about it. My name is Elva. When I had the pleasure of running some of the top grossing mobile games back in the early days of mobile gaming, I know I look young, it became clear to me very quickly that a successful app is one that can engage with its users deeply and sustainably. Now, as the product manager for VR app engagement and retention, I can confidently tell you that that's still the case in VR. So for those of you who've worked in mobile gaming before, perhaps, I'm really glad you're here and you know what I'm talking about. And for those of you who haven't worked with live services products before, I'm really glad you're here so that I can tell you why engagement should also be a top priority for you alongside your app sales. So why should you care about engagement? The bottom line is that it helps you make money and make money sustainably. When you first launch your app, you know how important momentum is to your app sales. And momentum is only built up when users play with your games and talk about them to generate virality for you. When you launch subsequent content updates, engagement is a prerequisite for monetizing your content. So there are two types of engagement levers, the evergreen lever and the time-based lever. A time-based engagement lever is best used for introducing freshness to your content. So think a Halloween-themed event or dungeon in your game. An evergreen lever is best used for deepening engagement on a given piece of content that you launch. Think about a leaderboard or a competition in your app. MetaQuest platform covers a variety of engagement levers, including evergreen and also time-based levers. Some great examples here are developer events, posts, and notifications for introducing new things in your app, and evergreen levers like destinations or a shortcut to a place in your app, leaderboards, and achievements. So a smart developer checks the boxes and uses both types of levers. A genius one would actually adapt engagement levers to their unique users, game design, and monetization strategy. Here's a quick hypothetical example of an RPG game who is developing a new dungeon in their game. The developer first builds anticipation for the new feature by pre-announcing the new feature, and then quickly followed by the actual launch and a number of evergreen levers who are designed for increasing or maximizing the concurrent player base of this launch. Then subsequently, the developer dresses up the dungeon, launches a variety of events over time to maximize the replayability of the content that you worked so hard to launch. And on top of the events, you also see seasonal store items, store bundles, and monetization levers that are tied deeply into your engagement levers. So here we have a feature launch that normally is stale, and a developer who's able to make it come to life by adding engagement on top. So MetaQuest platform is actively improving our support for VR app engagement. And we're mainly doing this in three ways because we know that first, you need to be able to reach your users. And second, you need to be able to merchandise your products really well so you show the best of your products to them. And third, you need to make smart decisions in real time with good data. And we're improving in all these three areas. I'm about to show you a nice little demo of a pilot program that we have been working on. Oh, looks like the sound is off, but you can imagine Crab Rave playing on our slide. I challenge all of you to play on the leaderboard of that song. I bet it's one of the hardest competitions and the best badges you can have. Here is an example of a pilot program where we're using Facebook for its reach and the ability to merchandise your apps, reaching to VR users while they're not in headset. We're so very grateful for supporting a community of very innovative developers. Thank you for trusting us and using the services that we provide. Here's a quick snapshot of a bunch of apps who are taking advantage of a variety of the engagement levers we provide. So thank you very much. So if you take away with one thing today, it's that engagement matters. It's an essential part of making a sustainable business. I'm a firm believer in this, and we've also got a whole panel of experts who will share their unique take on how they think about engagement, maximize engagement and success in their VR apps. To lead the panel, I'd like to introduce my colleague Caitlin and our two panelists, Chachin and Jeff.
Thank you, Elva. That was great. Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin Bigham. I'm a product manager on the MetaQuest store. And my job is to make it easy for our players to discover your apps and purchase them so they can play. We're here to talk a little bit about engagement features that developers use to maximize reach with their users. And we have two of our favorite developers here with us today, Chachin Lee, head of studio from Big Box VR, and Jeff Landy, CEO of Lucky VR. At the end, we will do a Q&A. At that time, I'll ask you all to line up in the aisle with the microphone, but I'll give you a heads up before we get there. So, okay, let's dive in. Chachin and Jeff, thank you so much for being here today. Super excited to chat about Population 1 and Vegas Infinite. As we kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about your titles? Where did the inspiration come from? Why VR? And, just kind of what led you here today? Jeff, I'll kick it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Caitlin. Super happy to be here. So yeah, my title came about in 2014. I built the game as kind of a poker player. First, no game dev background experience, but it was just kind of a product that I wanted to see, exist in the world. So at the time I was playing kind of live and online poker almost every day. And, live poker was always way more fun, way more immersive. So when I got my hands on a DK1, I thought, wow, this compared to, mobile or, web current online poker, which is 2D and you're just kind of clicking versus, in the headset and having that immersive poker experience, I thought, that could be super compelling. So I was at Connect in, 2015, where I saw the Oculus Touch, and in the Toy Box demo, there was real-time avatars, physics objects, and I just kind of thought from a poker perspective, if that could be a poker table and the avatars could be real people and the physics objects kind of chips and cards, we would have something super good. So I went all in, at that moment, built the game, from there, released it 2018 on, the original CV1. And just kind of never looked back from there. We've grown the studio to, about 180 people now working on our live service title called Vegas Infinite.
Amazing. Love that story. All right, Chachin, over to you.
Hello, I'm Chachin Lee. I'm co-founder and CEO of Big Box VR, and in 2021, we were acquired by Meta. So at Meta, I'm the head of studio at Big Box, of the Big Box studio. And we built a game called Population 1, and it's a battle royale. And a lot of the inspiration came from the fact that I've been in games for a while. So I was at Valve, I was at Sony and different places, and the first time I used VR, just as I'm sure many of you have done the same thing, you put on the headset and you're just like, holy crap, a true kind of visceral moment. And but on top of that, it was seeing other players in VR, just like that sense of co-presence is immense. So we decided to build an entire game around that sense of co-presence, and we thought a battle royale and FPS experience would be amazing. So that's how we got started.
Great, thank you. Can you describe for me what role you play in your organization as it relates to driving user engagement? Jeff?
Yeah, for me, as I said, as a poker player, it's kind of the cheat code for us in that I relate so well to our user base. So any cool promotion or event that I think would be cool is generally cool for our poker playing audience in the game. So I definitely kind of have that dual perspective of between the Lucky VR dev side and our player base, where I can be kind of that layer in between to kind of figure out what really would resonate with our community for engagement efforts, and that's been kind of a big benefit for us.
Chachin, how about you?
I think one of the most important things as the founder or the lead person for the entire effort is that live service has to be in your DNA. It's not something that you just build a great game and you switch it on. It's literally built into the core essence of it, the loop, the business model, the people you hire. It's everything combined. And so thinking about that from ground up that's really my job. So
What is the loop?
for Population One, one of the biggest things we care about is connecting people online. So on the surface, it is a very competitive game where you shoot each other a little bit, but but just a little bit. But the essence of it is that you meet online, and you often meet with strangers, and we pair you up with two other strangers, and you go into a battle royale setting. And we find that when people win their first match, that trigger moment happens, and they become friends, and they continue to play. So we have an extremely strong correlation between how many friends you have in our game versus your retention. So we drive people towards being friends, and a lot of them meet offline as well, and weddings have happened. So it's a marker of a great game.
So before we dive a bit deeper into the specific engagement tactics in your titles, let me just get a quick pulse from the audience. By show of hands, how many of you have developed a VR application? Okay. And how many of you have built live services into your game? Okay, great. So we have some familiarity here. All right, Jeff, before you started to develop Vegas Infinite, how did you think about user engagement and retention from the get-go?
Yeah, so for us, we were poker first at the beginning, and definitely for us in terms of engagement and retention, we look to do kind of specific leaderboards in our game. So poker is a very kind of social, competitive game. So we developed these weekly leaderboards where you could win an exclusive ring for your avatar. So when you come into our game, you're a pleb, you don't have a bankroll, and there's a kind of a low leaderboard that you could start at that that happens throughout the week. And then if you win that, you get this super cool, ring for your avatar that you can then show off at the poker table. Other players would see it, they'd be interested. You could, show off your accolade and then tell people that, I won this on the leaderboard. And then, typically they would then go and try to chase that leaderboard for the week. And then the higher the stakes you played in our kind of virtual, fake, poker game, you get better rings, better accolades. And that was kind of this evergreen, driver for us where every week at the end of Sunday, those leaderboards would reset and you'd have a whole new, cohort competing for the leaderboard. So that since 2018 has been, a tried and true kind of evergreen mechanic for us.
Chachin, how about you? Outside of the core matchmaking feature you just described, were there any other things that you built into the game from the very beginning to really help drive user engagement?
Yeah, so since we thought of the game as a live service, and if you didn't know this, in the beginning it was a paid product. So, but it was always planned to be free, in fact. So it was really paid to start, and we imagined the ecosystem growing, and then we have to keep very passionate users on board throughout that journey. And then one day when the ecosystem has grown, and it has grown quite a bit, we can finally go free and get that next wave of users on board. And so if you imagine that from the very get-go, you kind of have to go, well, you're a free-to-play game from the get-go, even though it's paid, and then you build in those levers for events, you build in that initial XP track to keep people going, you build a store upfront, even though it's a paid product, and we just had all the mechanics there already, so that when we went free, it was basically a very smooth transition.
Where did you get the original user base of the game, and how did you design the original loop to fit with the early adopters?
That's a great question. In fact, Jeff and I, we hadn't met before this, and we were like nerding out about this. And we followed the same playbook without knowing it, which is it's pure hustle in the beginning. Like, it's not marketing dollars, because if you're making a mobile game, you can spend, you can do user acquisition, you have different channels, and you see what happens. But in VR, it's quite different. The UA channels don't quite work yet. So for us anyway, it might work for other people. But so what we did was we went online and we had 0 users, and literally I got an intern person who was nice enough to join me, and we literally just pinged random people in VR groups and said, would you like to play my game? Would you like to play my game? And got turned down thousands of times. And luckily, like maybe 10 people said yes. And then from the 10, you get to 20, and then it's a lot of hand wrangling in the beginning. And
yeah, I was in a VR developer Slack, begging people to play a build, and I think one person, joined, from there. But then, we eventually got like one poker table to go, and we would just, for 6 months pre-launch, play with that one table every day, honing in on kind of the core loop, and then it just kind of built from there.
So those early adopters are early VR people rather than poker or first-person shooter users, right? It sounds like
yes, VR social players.
Yep.
Great. So Jeff, we were chatting about this at lunch, but you recently went through a big rebranding from PokerStars VR to Vegas Infinite. Can you tell us a little bit about how you thought about that rebranding process and how you made sure you brought those original users and that built up user base along for the journey?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, we just went through a big rebrand, so very exciting. But yeah, so we had built up, a lot of brand equity since 2018 with the PokerStars name and title. So we wanted to make sure that we did a really good job when we rebranded the entire game. So like when we launched, we went community first. We let players know that something was changing. We would do teasers. I did a dev diary on YouTube, kind of explaining the reasons why you're changing your brand and what the users can look forward to in the new version of the game. We also did launch pack. So if you join our game within the first 2 weeks of the rebrand, you would get custom Vegas Infinite clothes for your avatar, props, apparel, entrance exit effects. So they were kind of excited for the rebrand to take place. We started as poker, but we have added blackjack, slots, roulette, craps, a game called Rocket Rush. So the game had expanded so much that we wanted to, indicate to our players where it was today and what our vision for the future looked like. So we thought it appropriate to rebrand as Vegas Infinite. We also are giving away 30 Quest 3s. So every day you log in, you have a chance to get something. We have a TV, campaign going. So just trying to make it as awesome, as special as possible, during the rebrand phase.
Congrats on the rebrand. Chachin, as you took Population 1 from paid to free, how did you think about bringing that original user base along in the journey?
Yeah, so we love our core group of users who were there before we went free, and we were a little bit nervous because we weren't sure how the core players would feel about us going free. But luckily, people were generally very receptive because, as you know, for a game like this, matchmaking is probably, it's the essence, the liquidity of the players, being able to match with people of your own skill set. So for us, when that happened, there was actually a lot of people cheering for it. They're pretty happy. We also rewarded our core players with a lot of skins and stuff that no one could ever get again. So it's really when they wear those things in the game, you could tell they're OG players, and people kind of go crazy for that. So that's how we did it.
Great. And have you seen any big differences in user behavior since you've made that shift outside of what you just touched on? Are you bringing in like a whole new user base? Are you seeing different, characteristics of these people?
Yeah, I think one of the key things that we found after going free is that VR is a very weekend-based kind of. You see the patterns, right? When you're watching the metrics, you see the concurrencies. It's very weekend-driven. But after we went free, we noticed that during the summer, actually, the weekdays were much higher concurrency. And that's because we are opening up a new group of players, and a lot of the players had summer off, and they could come in and enjoy our product. So we started to watch our metrics, and it was a very different characteristic, and that was really interesting.
That is interesting to see the seasonality of the users now.
Definitely.
That you've made that
For a
shift.
free game versus a paid game, it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also very curious with this seasonality, how do you actually set the cadence of content release or your events or roadmap overall?
Yeah, so we definitely tie it with live real world things that are going on. So Halloween, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Lunar New Year, we'll try and have seasonal packs and IAP and sales that kind of coincide with those events. It always comes down to capacity. What can you produce at what cadence to be able to hit all of them? And a lot of times you want to create really high quality content around each one, not just try to put up one item or something, to that effect. So really it's a balance of capacity. We also have our monthly subscription box. So that gives us a great cadence to hit, which is every month we have a subscription program called the Club, where if you're a subscriber, you get like a monthly goodie box of custom props and apparel effects in it. So that usually ties in with kind of a monthly cadence of content to drop, and we've kind of stuck to that.
Looks like there's a lot in terms of balancing the economy and running events or things in the game that's could be tied to new users or very experienced users in your game, right? So I'd love to maybe hear from Chachin first. How did you graduate your new users into the very experienced user group who are going to stick around and make sure people like me don't survive?
Yeah, I think for us specifically, in the past. I've run products that, they're more RPG based. There's lots of systems design and hardcore economies, and Pop One is not one of those products. It's like all our stuff is really about unlocking cosmetics. You buy it or you unlock it. If you form friends with each other, we give you, friendship coins basically, and you can turn those in for cosmetics either. So for us, balancing that is less of a problem. However, our real currency is people friending each other and forming squads and then going to matches together. So we keep track of that very carefully. When people are coming together and becoming friends, once again, the same stuff, but drilling it in, the retention's better, they have a better time, and they actually win more often. So that's kind of the virtuous circle that we're going after.
And we also know that Vegas Infinite also has a very interesting tiering of graduating users higher and higher, yeah?
Yeah, for the players that want to chase the weekly leaderboard, but you have to get them interested in doing that, in the first place to make that weekly commitment to the game. Typically, we like them to have like a really great winning moment or a really great social table. So we have like a poker tournament series as well. And typically, if you run deep in a poker tournament, it gets exponentially more exciting as the player base goes down to kind of a final table. And we found that players that are able to engage with that product and make a final table retain and enjoy the game and monetize a lot better. So we try to drive players. We have a metaverse poker tour that we created to try and get players to have like the ultimate fun social poker experience, which is there. We onboard them, we get them to learn the mechanics of the game, but still try to drive them to have that moment where once you have it and it's amazing, you'll retain and engage for a lot longer.
Great. So bringing it back to some of the topics that Elva spoke about earlier, if we look at the Quest platform features today that help drive engagement, which ones stand out that you use in your toolbox regularly?
So for us, we use a lot of them, but Quest notifications is our go-to tool for platform features. If there's any update, a sale, TOS change, it's a short text base, but it hits the most of your user base in VR and on mobile. You can also use it as a re-engagement platform, so you can target a cohort that hasn't engaged with your game in the past 2 weeks and send them an incentive to log in. We'll give them a free tournament ticket to try to incentivize them to come back and re-engage. You can also reward your more engaged and loyal users. So you can target a cohort that has been active in your game and reward them for doing so through a notification. So it's really a great kind of tool. We use the Oculus Meta events as well. So those are kind of scheduled appointments. So like for our Metaverse Poker Tour, each one of those events will have a mini main event, a high roller event, and you can create kind of marketing material around that and set that as a date. And then players can, opt in to show that they're going to attend that event, and other players can see that as well. So if they have friends or if they have enemies they've made at the table, they'll see that this person is going to be at the table at that time, and I can join that event at the specific time to jump in VR. So that's been, very effective for us. Destinations is the last one that's really been a great thing for us. So every one of our poker tables, we turned into a destination. So that means that if you're in a group already, you could easily jump into any of the poker environments. But also a secondary effect is that if you can get a high CCU on one of your destinations, you get kind of shelf space on the store of these are the popular destinations going on MetaQuest, and that'll show up as this kind of permanent exposure for you. So that's been another driver for us.
Great. Chachin, outside of the ones Jeff spoke about, are there any that Big Box is using that you want to speak to?
I think if you're just starting out and if you're completely overwhelmed and you're like, I don't know how to do any of this, the developer dashboard, the very vanilla one, is excellent. Actually, it's really, really good. You can see where your users are coming from, where they're finding you. It gives you very standard and useful retention and engagement data, like how much time they're playing, stuff like that. And we build a lot of internal dashboards, and we've cross-referenced everything, and it's very accurate. So I would go with that if you're a little bit overwhelmed. That's a great starting place.
Thank you. Okay, so we will have time for questions. So if you have a question for one of our panelists, please line up in the aisle at the microphone, and we'll start Q&A after we wrap up this next question, which is, Jeff, Chachin, what advice do you have for other developers who are looking to build titles with lasting engagement on the MetaQuest platform?
Definitely community first. That's been our backbone since launch until today. We have players that were in that closed beta that still play every day. And if you have a strong community that you're transparent with, you're communicating with, it'll help you if you're looking to build a lasting title, especially live ops, as it ebbs and flows. Having that core user base that will be your biggest advocates in the game can give you the best feedback as well. We've hired people from our community as well who have really engaged with the game. So that's been the difference maker for us, as well as just honing in on your core loop for poker and just leaning into the competitive social nature of it, building leaderboards, poker tournaments, things like that around what was already kind of core to the game has been kind of the pieces of our success.
I think engagement and launching starts before you launch. So if a lot of people, they build something and they launch it and they're like, look, and then no one shows up. Well, I mean, it's to be expected that no one shows up because you kind of have to go hand wrangle. Like if I went out in the desert and built a town, I don't really expect people to suddenly show up one day. I have to convince them that the town is being built to go there and maybe even build some of the parts of the town along with them. I think for me that metaphor works the best. So so build the community before you launch the product for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about the other day was both of you mentioned like getting the first 10 users. Was there's like some
Yeah,
tipping point?
if you can't get 10 people to like your game, you probably shouldn't even launch it. Like, I know that sounds so dumb, but getting 10 people just to like your game is really freaking hard. So get 10 obsessed people. That's the key.
All right. Okay. Looks like we have some questions.
Yeah, sure. So we're trying to launch a mixed reality game, so that's even more nascent. So I'm just wondering for like these initial messages that you're pinging people either on Reddit or Discord or whatever, what worked well for you that I could use as like my initial kind of like pinging strategy?
Definitely try and provide value back as well too. So the one developer that joined us from that VR dev Slack group, they had a game as well too. So I played their build, offered notes to them, and then in reciprocal to that, they became engaged user for us. So you're asking people to do something, try and provide value in any way you can to that group. Show how dedicated and passionate you are about your game, and if people see that, they'll want to engage with you and help you along the way, especially other devs. We know how hard it is to do this, and if we see someone else with a build now, like no matter what, I'll like play it, give honest feedback, and go out of my way to do so. So try to lean into things like that.
And I remember the kangaroo story you had for one of your early adopters.
Correct. Yes. So we had like some of our very early, beta players. We really try to go out of our way to make them feel as special as possible. So for that early group, a lot of them we built custom props and apparel just for them. So one player was from Australia. We're like, okay, you'll have a kangaroo as your lucky poker charm, and that made them like a lifelong fan for engaging in that way.
Hi, my name's Doug, and we've got a few games on the platform, and they're more narrative based, and they're not really service games necessarily. So it makes it harder to retain our users. One and done and I'm very focused on or interested in episodic, like content, but which is more robust than cosmetic. So my question, well, first of all, I just want to say, but Population One sort of reinvigorated my passion for the platform. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
it kept
really
my
nice of you.
family. I mean, it brought us together during tough times, and we don't really engage with other people. We just do our own thing, but it's been fantastic for us. But back to my question, what suggestions do you that for games that aren't there is a place for products that aren't service games. I hope in the future.
100%. I think I might be biased, but I tend to think of everything as like a live service. Like if you're a YouTube person making content, it's live service. If you're episodic, you're a live service. Because to me, you're just forming a relationship and you want that to last forever, right? So the best thing that you can do, I think, if I were you, is to have you built the game yet, or are you in the process of it?
Oh yeah, we have 3 on the store currently. Yeah.
Okay. I would make sure that you have a personal, direct relationship with your users, whether they're in a mailing list or a Discord channel, and you can activate them. Because if you can't do that, then you don't really have a relationship. So that's where it starts. And then I would actually use those users to test out your new episodes and have them go propagate and go market it for you in a way. So I would activate your base users.
Great. And one quick one. On the pilot program, what's the timeline on that? Like as far as integrating, like when is the user going to be able to see a clip of, say, Pop 1, push a button and and download the game immediately? Like when is that coming?
I can probably comment on that a little bit. So we're trying to gather all the learnings this year until the end of the year to see all our learnings. I think our goal is to see if there's any way we can enable developers to directly use these channels well, because you know your audience the best, and we are here to offer the reach, the ability to merchandise, and the ability to learn from what you're doing. So I will come back with hopefully some good news by the end of the year, depending on our learnings. I did want to add one more thing on how to be a live service game, even if maybe the base game isn't, traditionally in the live service camp, is that, well, we're certainly a platform for all types of games. So we welcome everyone, no matter what kind of business model you choose to have. And as Chachin was saying, a lot of the live ops or building a relationship with your user base doesn't have to happen exactly in the game either, right? So when you first launch, I see, let's say you can set up an event on your social channels asking users to share their gameplay, to share their art creations on your game, to share their reviews of the story. These are interactions that are valuable to the user base as well, and we should consider those as live operations of your product.
Thank you so much.
Hey there, thanks for the panel. My name's Michael. We do have a game with a pretty large user base, and I'm just curious to ask you guys, as far as moderation goes, what responsibility do you guys feel like as game providers to mitigate toxicity and trolls and stuff? Like, what's the best practices? Any advice on that, or is it just kind of an inevitability with such a big user base?
Well, for us, we're an 18-plus game. We integrated ToxMod. I'm not sure if you've heard about it, but voice AI moderation, and it's been a game changer for us as well too. I would never just kind of leave the community alone. You really do need to have a hand in moderating the table so that players know when they log in, they're going to have a safe, fun experience. It does mean, getting a system for banning, and you got some 1-star reviews of, I wasn't toxic, but I was banned. But you have to do the right thing for your community if you want a lasting community. So develop a fair but robust system. Tools like ToxMod, great CS, and other ways to work with support to be able to moderate the community and have your community guidelines clearly posted, make players accept it within the game, and just get it so where your players are able to, if you can build tools like in-game reporting, that your players will police a lot of it for you, and bad behavior just shouldn't stand.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Also, that special item to reward the players who are helping you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the valuable information and sharing your experiences. I'm Yasmina, a dev currently working on Space Salvage, a game that's going to come out very soon for VR. And now I'm switching gear to be really conscious of what I can do post-launch to get people engaged and keep people coming back. So I'm curious of two things. One, is there such a thing as too many events? And how would you, what's your strategy for balancing your focus on developing something new or a new mechanic for a game and just focusing on an event that's more cosmetic and like a smaller base event? How do you level those out?
I will go quickly, and then maybe you can chime in. But I think it really depends on your audience and your product. But so I'm going to speak in general a tiny bit. But if you can think of, and by the way, Pop One hasn't done this that well, so we're still trying to figure out ways to do this well. But in general, if you can think of events as different cadences intertwining with each other and depending on how big they are. So typically, actually, in an ideal scenario, you would have maybe even per week something that people can look forward to that's smaller, and then you can have something every month that's a little bit bigger, and then everything once a quarter, perhaps. So I'd build in that cadence, and I think that is pretty important, and then timing it up with seasonal stuff that happens, like Halloween or something like that. I think it gets people to come back naturally.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely something you ramp up to post-launch. Everything is already new. Your game is brand new, so a lot of players will just be enjoying it and figuring it out. And then as you get kind of more mature, figuring out, what is the right cadence, making sure you're measuring your events and you're getting the right ROI for all the work it takes to create custom content or run a specific event to make sure that it's working well. You can probably try a lot of different events. We did until we found ones that worked. And when you find something or a mechanic or an event or a cadence that's working, really kind of dial it in to keep using it as long as possible. We also do a lot of things that still, don't scale. So we'll run a billionaire's night or something and do a Twitch stream and only get a small percentage of users tuning in. But those ones tuning in are the diehard, players who really love your game and doing things at the beginning that are just, out of your way to make sure that, they're still special events and things going on for your users to look forward to when they put on the headset has been something that can pay off over
Just
time.
one more thought though. If a product's core retention is not good, no events will bring them back.
Correct.
So it has to be really good, and then the events amplify it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, a little bit more to add is that once you scale after the initial product market fit where your core game is fairly good, you might get to a point where you have different types of game loops that are targeted to different types of users as well. So sometimes you want to have a very big seasonal main thing that's meant for a majority of your user base. Or you could also at the same time have very elite or very core user events for those who are looking for very high end or let's say a collector's loop game, right? Sometimes it might be for your very, very highly dedicated power users, and those are great too. So a combination of these is going to cover the majority of your user base, and that's why diversity really helps. But having too many things to engage does burn users out. But I don't think many of us are in that camp for VR yet.
Thanks a lot. That's really helpful.
Hi, I'm Aaron Sorrells, the unemployed alcoholic, and I have the Soapstone Comedy Club in Horizon Worlds. And question for you. First off, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and insights today. But within VR, with the amazing rate of change and the unpredictability all around, what cadence are you all using as far as planning and evaluating performance metrics and things like that?
The rate of change is immense, for sure. That's what makes it kind of exciting, too. I guess that's why some of us are here. The interesting part is that, like I said before, the core product when you launch it, and this is not just in VR, by the way. I've seen this in mobile and console and PC, is that it has a fingerprint, and that fingerprint doesn't change that easily. So if you have a game that works, it will continue to work, and you can make it better, sometimes a lot better. But regardless of the technological changes and stuff like that, but if you have a product that when you launch is not actually working, it can't usually be saved. So with that in mind, it's a roundabout way to say that if you launch something and it's working, how crazy it is doesn't actually matter because you have a core thing that works. But if it's not working, then kind of have to reevaluate regardless of anything that comes up. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's...
Sure,
yeah,
certainly.
Yeah.
So at a 10-person user scale, right, like knowing if something works for 10 people is probably relatively intuitive.
Well, that's actually why we start with 10 people, then 20, then 100, because if it's not going to work for 10, like one of the earliest mistakes I've made was like, well, it needs a network effect. So it doesn't work for 10, but add, 3 million. And then, yeah, it doesn't work. So it just has to work at the core.
So what's the change? How do you evaluate the change of user responses as you grow the?
I mean, like every single feature we launch, everything that we do, I have a 15-minute ticker on my phone, which is right there right now, that tells me everything that's happening. So when we launch something, we know if it's working or not. I'm sure you do the same thing, right? Like it's very precise, and you know exactly if it's working immediately.
Okay, so I'm so sorry, but we've run out of time, but we will all be in the lobby just outside these doors to answer any additional questions. Jeff, Chachin, Elva, thank you so much. If you can leave our audience with one quick takeaway for their game, 10 words or less, plus or minus, what would it be?
Build a great community.
Start it before you launch.
Engagement in your game, money in your pocket.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining
thank
us.
you.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your Connect.